welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host as always, Elwood Jones, and joining me of course is Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
Tonight it's full scream ahead as we bring to the booth the cult horror by Stephen Sommers, Deep Rising from 1998, 1 year short of the greatest movie year ever, and the year where he would release the Mummy reboot, cementing himself as a person to watch in the horror action genre. But really it began 1 year earlier with Deep Rising, a watery effort that unfortunately cost the studio 40 million and only clawed back 12 million. But here we see Captain Finnegan and his crew are hired to drive a group of mercenaries out to an undisclosed location, which turns out to be the luxury cruise ship Agronautica, which they plan to rob. However, upon boarding the ship, they find the crew and passengers missing, and themselves now pursued by a monstrous creature which has taken over the ship. Exciting times once again as we continue our creature feature season here on the podcast. And Kim, another first time watch for yourself.
Yes.
And another film drenched heavy in nostalgia for myself, and a film that I have a real problem with, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. But this is a film that was originally penned when he was working as a staff writer for Hollywood Pictures, who, if you're not up to speed on your Disney history, were basically one of the sub-studios, along with Touchstone, who were owned by Disney, back before they were, just buying other people's franchises to pad out their lack of creativity. They had studios like Hollywood Pictures and Touchstone that put out non-Disney fares, so things like Sixth Sense and Tombstone, Nixon, that sort of things. And Deep Rising was one of those films, and originally it was released under the title of Tentacles, which is easy to confuse with the really awful giant octopus movie of the same name. This, however, isn't awful, and really this was his sort of first big film, because prior to this he'd done live action versions of Jungle Book and the Adventures of Huck and Finn for Disney, and this was sort of his first jaunt into the action horror genre. And in doing so, he seemingly rounds up every single actor working in Hollywood at the time and crams them into this movie, as we have everyone from Treat Williams and Anthony Herold, Wes Studi, all the way to Jason Fleming, in this wonderful mishmash of a movie that is just both scary and funny and taps into that wonderful aquatic horror genre, which we don't really see enough of. I think there's not enough horror on boats or underwater.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before in general, that horror set in boats, and even I don't know. I mean, it just feels so different. And I was watching this, and it came to my, I don't know, it came to my knowledge. I guess that I feel that maybe it's the water element that makes it so fun or whatnot, because maybe that's why it's that's what draws me to shark flicks a lot. Or even, when we talk about Crawl later on, just, animals in waters or creatures in waters in general. It just feels so fun because there is that, you can play with so many of these elements, and they can have this more fun sort of angle that you can take, as well as action and tension, because there, you can build a lot from what you can't see and that sort of thing. And for me, at least, this is what really gives Deep Rising this really lovely, this really kind of fun adventure. I mean, it also helps that the movie sets off the tone really great. I was hooked from the beginning, because it was just after this whole first person camera type of underwater thing going on. Yeah. It jumped straight into the boat, and then it was the camera panning down onto this boat there that was, and then it was this Indiana Jones adventurous music going on in the background, and you're just like, oh man, this sounds like it's gonna be fun, and I really love it, So no, I mean, Deep Rising actually reminded me a lot of the vibes I got when I was watching Deep Blue Sea. Like, there's a comedic part of it, but there's also this really, like, this, you know, like, lingering horror and tension that's kind of there. And, you know, I really like, you know, like, how it takes a while for the actual creature to be revealed. So you have that suspense of what it looks like, and, oh, this is a mystery creature, so you don't really know what it is, and...
Yeah. Oh, definitely so. And, I mean, obviously when it comes to boats, it's kind of like the haunted house setting, but we get a little more to play with. I mean, the corridors are naturally claustrophobic. So we got all these tight spaces that we have everything in, and at the same time we can go from like very sort of glamorous locations like the casino and the ballroom, and then we can go down into like really grimy locations like the engine shop, and like just by going on different levels of the ship. And there's so many moments as well when this film where you're basically knee high in water, which means you're just you don't know somebody's going to grab you at any time, unlike other locations where you sort of can see things coming. I mean, with this one, you never know what's going to be coming in, and it also means we get lots of fun moments where we get to like have water like rising up and have like the platforms like buckling up. There's a really great chase sequence where you see the corridors sort of like buckling up as behind them as they run. So, but I totally agree. This film sort of knows when it wants to be funny and it knows when it wants to be scary, and it walks that sort of very skilled sort of tightrope act that it has, that you, as you said already, like Deep Blue Sea does, Evil Dead does, and there's something about this film, and I think certainly the fact it's such an unknown entity. It's just like, for the most part, it's just like a huge bunch of tentacles chasing our cast around this ship that you never know what's happening. And even before then, we have this great scene where it initially attacks the ship, and you see like all these extras being like thrown around, but the ship itself is such a weird setup because it's supposed to be this ultra sort of like glamorous sort of ship setup. So you've got all these like people that are gambling and stuff, but apparently they couldn't decide on the theme because we get Hulu dancers blending with this Macau casino vibe. And then if in case that wasn't enough, you've also got taiko drummers, which is like Japan, going off in the corner. And they've got all these different themes. Like, no one could decide like one theme for this ship that we were going to go with. It's sort of like, go with Macau Casino and stick with it. Don't just add random bits because you think they seem tropical or glamorous in there. So
yeah, it was one of the really weird things, and I kind of was wondering a lot on what was really, you know, like what the boat was, because at the beginning you looked at it and because they were sailing in the South China Sea, it made sense that, you know, they had these Chinese type of elements to it, lanterns and, you know, like that sort of thing, and even the lighting was a bit like that, and that kind of made sense. But then, you know, you saw these other little bits and you were like, huh? What? But yeah, I mean, it's you know, it you know, obviously that part is not really long, and the action starts really, really quickly when, you know, things start, you know, basically falling apart, and it, you know, the creature has already invaded the cruise ship before anything has happened.
Oh yeah, and because I mean, what I love about this scene is like 500 extras, but none of it's actually shot by Sommers. It's shot by the second unit director, because if he had directed it, they would have to pay them like actor wages rather than, you know, extra wages, because of the rules of the Screen Actors Guild. So when they finished filming it, they brought him out and said, "Oh, this is the actual director." And the extras thought they'd been working with the director the whole time. So. But it also gives us one of the best kills of the film, like really early on. We get to see a woman dragged down the toilet.
Nothing like some blood splattering action, right? Like
it's sort of like, it's so stupid. It's sort of like whenever like there's like something going down and someone runs and hides in the toilet, it never fails to pay off. Like if we're seeing it in Jurassic Park or we're seeing it in this film, the payoff is always fantastic, no matter what. Whenever you see like in these scenes, whenever you see someone run into the toilet, you know it's going to lead to a good payoff. So yeah,
but I think, you know, like, it's really great, the whole setup and that sort of thing, and it, you get this beginning scene where this happens, and you know that, and you kind of have originally you're kind of looking at this and you think about, okay, well, these guys are going to an unknown location, and then they're talking about the cruise ship. Do they just kind of, do their trajectories just align, like they end up, crossing each other, or it comes to the latter, where obviously they're going to steal money, just like Trillian St. James, which is I guess a thief or something that made it onto this extravagant boat to go and steal from the vault, obviously.
Played by Famke Janssen.
Yeah.
The starting a mini trend of kick-ass ladies in evening gowns. Unfortunately, it was this because of the delay with this film. It took them an extra year to do the creature effects. So this one came out after the Relic, which also had a kick-ass female scientist in an evening gown hunting for monsters in the sewer. So, but yeah, I really liked her character. I mean, she's not a particularly good thief because she gets captured straight away, but I kind of liked the fact that she had that sort of Catwoman vibe to her.
Oh yeah, I mean she's a really fun character, and I think that none of the characters here are actually super serious. The mercenaries are a little bit more on the serious side. They're more soldier-esque in that sense.
Yeah.
But the main crew that's coming out from the actual boat that takes them there, and Trillian St. James, they all have this kind of humor to them where it's very one-liner, very, their dialogue is very quippy and quick to each other, but they also don't dwell on a lot of things either. So you have these fun moments that kind of get cut off, obviously, by the tension, but it also helps cut the whole action scene a little to kind of give you a few little laughs, especially when things get worse and worse, and every single time something happens, you have Finnegan, which is played by Treat Williams, and he just goes, "What now?" And
yeah, Treat Williams is sort of like the Han Solo of the sea in this film. That's the sort of vibe I got off him, and it's not. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this was a role originally set aside to be played by
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, Harrison Ford, but when he dropped out, he took half the budget with him. So it's you can tell, you can get that real Han Solo sort of vibe of him. But Treat Williams is a treat in this movie. Him and his buddy, played by Kevin O'Connor.
Yeah, his engine man.
Yeah, who turns up in all Stephen Sommers movies, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of, when you look at Kevin O'Connor, it's kind of like Bruce Spence, one of these odd-looking guys who's just had such a great career, and it makes you wish that you sort of stuck with acting when you're in school, rather than people going, "Oh, well, you haven't got leading man quality." It's like, well, Kevin O'Connor seems to be doing all right for himself.
I think that applies to a lot of movies that we watch, where once you kind of appeal to a certain director in a certain way for maybe the charisma you have or whatnot, then basically you're set. You might not be getting the top roles, but you're getting a lot of little roles, and that still pays the bills, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, this film, as we said before, it's just stacked wall to wall with character actors. All these guys you've seen playing various characters in different other things. I mean, we even got Trevor Goddard, who's Kano in Mortal Kombat.
I knew you'd mention it.
you have to hold it. You have to pause it and put your hand over half his face. It's oh, there we go. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad day's work. I mean, for Kevin O'Connor, I mean, he gets all the best lines as he gets to be the goofy sidekick, and also gets to make out with Una Damon. So I mean, that's a real hard job he's got. It's the most bizarre romantic connection possible for two characters, but for some reason I totally somehow bought into this connection these two characters have, and I was so upset when she gets bumped off as early as she does. So
yeah, I mean, what happens to her is just kind of like an opening, right?
Yeah,
because everything else, there's so much more happens afterwards, and the film, despite it taking quite a while, I think it takes like more than half the movie before we actually see the creature itself. It still has decent pacing in the sense that, you know, like there's so much nice build up with all these characters and what they're encountering along the way, and these little hints of what this creature is capable of, like the various traits of this creature that make up what it is. And I like that because obviously this isn't a normal creature. We're not talking about a shark. We're not talking an alligator. We're not talking about anything that we've actually seen. But obviously, like, one of the owner of the Argonautica brings up a point about some, I forgot what it was, but some creature.
It's an otia.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's basically like a giant worm.
Yeah. So he talks about that, and basically everybody's thing is, well, that doesn't sound like a good thing, you know? And this is just basically a giant underwater worm.
It is. It's kind of like those maggot things in King Kong, but not as horrific. Oh god, that like creeped me out already. This, you know, there's certain scenes in movies that just really stick with you, and just like the mere thought of them just creep you out all over again. That the bug pit in King Kong is like always going to be one of those bits. Yeah, I mean, with the mercenaries, I mean the such caricatures of themselves, and it's all like when you break them down. Obviously, Wes Studi's like as the leader. It's Wes Studi doing the Wes Studi thing. He's just there to be like the charismatic older leader sort of guy. And then you look at these these bumbling crooks he's with. You've got Jason Fleming there, who's sort of like the tech guy, who's just basically just does a lot of Cockney stuff. You've got Trevor Goddard, who's the Australian guy, who does just what Trevor Goddard does.
Digimon Hansu. He was in something else. I keep forgetting what he was in.
He was in Blood Diamond, wasn't he?
He was in Blood Diamond. He's also in Guardians of the Galaxy.
And he's also in Furious 7 as well.
Yes. He's in a lot of stuff.
And he's going to be in the upcoming Shazam. Oh, there is. Yeah, Cliff Curtis.
Yes.
Who was also in Virus, which this movie also reminds me a lot of. And he was playing kind of a similar role in that one as well. So, but no, he's just basically this one. His whole character arc is he wants to sleep with women on every country. Which it sort of contradicts his like enlightened thinking book that he's seen reading when he's introduced. It's sort of like, okay, those two things don't go quite together, but.
Well, I mean, Cliff Curtis is also in a movie that we looked at earlier this year for basically our first Shark Week movie, The Meg. So.
Yes, he is.
So, that's something. No, like a lot of characters that came on this, basically, a lot of them we have seen sneak in little roles in other films that we've looked at. So the cast is pretty decent, even in terms of the supporting cast itself. You know, obviously it's not like some deep character arc. This isn't some, you know, Oscar-winning movie, but they have enough to make them fun to watch because they all do have their certain expertise and there's certain attitude and character to each of them.
Yeah, and I kind of like as well the fact that you've got these two very sort of rival groups, and because they're faced with this threat, they're then sort of like forced to work together, and you can see them like this begrudging respect like build like the further they're sort of like forced to be together, to the point that we get to like Wes Studi's end sequence. And you can see it has a bit of a moment there with Kevin O'Connor's character, and they have this really great joke about where he has the last bullet, which just, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but it still makes me laugh every time I see that scene. So.
But it's really fun because obviously on our other show, Game Warp, we just looked at Man of Medan, and
yes,
and it's a very similar type of structure where we do have two rival groups. One of them is mercenaries out for whatever, out to steal something, and then this other group which is out for whatever fun type of thing, and they also merge together. And obviously the outcome is not a creature feature, but more on the paranormal supernatural side. But like the structure is so similar that I kind of was reminded a little bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, just again, it's exploring an abandoned ship. Obviously, this one's more recently abandoned, and it's again only abandoned because all the crew and passengers have been eaten. And as we get that really great payoff sequence where we get to see the feeding chamber, and it's just like hundreds of bloody skeletons, and the fact that it's sort of like that you're looking at it, go, oh, that's probably not good enough edge, so we'll have the ghostly echoes of the victims like, play over this sequence as they just survey this scene. So,
and I just realized something as I'm looking at this IMDb page for Deep Rising, that the picture for Clint Curtis, who plays Billy in this movie, is actually the image of his melting body in the movie. Oh, nice. I love it.
Yeah, the melting Billy. Apparently, it was called.
But no, I mean, when we look at like some of the elements of the movie, like the action and whatnot, like I think that they really do utilize the place really well, because you go through the different areas, the different threats that can happen in them, and you have so many different areas where obviously we don't know because we're new to this maiden voyage of this cruise ship, but you kind of get lured into these different places, and then you kind of start seeing the strength of the character, the creature themselves. Like, well, they're able to go through, pipes and their little crevices, and there's so much of these little nooks and crannies that kind of give them, like the threat is basically everywhere. And I think that that's what really makes the movie truly feel so good as a creature feature, because you never know when something's going to happen.
Oh, definitely so. I mean, it kind of plays into that same sort of freedom that we saw with like the Blob remake, where it's just like it can get you anywhere. And there's a really great analogy that Treat Rising's character like offers, where he basically compares it to like them being in a jar surrounded by a hungry octopus.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you get this idea that it might be an octopus that we have, just like this really big ravenous octopus. So when we see like the big creature reveal at the end, was the payoff disappointing for yourself, Kim, or did it sort of like think, oh yeah, this is a good evolution of what we've seen already?
I think it's a good evolution, because it's a lot bigger than the little parts that we've been seeing, obviously. Because during the entire movie, they were hinting, and you start seeing like, oh, the shadow of it slithering through a pipe, and then you kind of see it dip down, and then you have these quick scenes where you don't really see a lot of the attacks in like the first quarter of the film type of thing, but then like when you get to the part where you start seeing the entire thing in just in the whole entire creature drop down, you kind of have it is cool. It is crazy because it's so big, obviously, but at the same time you're looking at this, and it's also, as we're going through these creature features, I think this is probably the first one. I'd like to say that this is the first one where the creature is actually CGI. Like the main creature is actually CGI, obviously. Because I think before that, most of our stuff was pretty much practical effects.
It was, because Arachnophobia we obviously covered before this, and that was real spiders, and they had the puppet spider.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything before that was like 80s prior. So, like with wild beasts, that's real animals and puppets, and alligators, obviously animatronics as well. So yeah, it's all practical effects. So this is our first use really of CGI in there. I mean, there was practical effects obviously done by Rob Bottin, who did The Thing. He's just actually maestro of practical effects, and Industrial Light and Magic did the actual creature effects as well for this one. And there's a scene where someone's basically asked him for like a piece of, a rubberized piece of the creature that they could just toss into the frame, and weeks went past, and then eventually like 6 crates arrived on the set containing like tubing for this cannon and the tentacle pieces to fire, and neither like Treat Williams or Jansen were like particularly excited about having a cannon fired at them just to get this shot. But when we get that whole like big reveal, it's not just sort of like, oh, we have like the big monster and then we blow it up and then we can relax. It's like, no, we're sort of like, we got to escape now from the bigger monster. So we have this whole jets. This is a brilliant part. They have Treat Williams and Veronica Jensen ride off on a jet ski through the corridors of the ship, being pursued by these tentacles that have this wonderful slapstick moment where they run into a door. Yeah. And we just see this big thud going through. It's all like, it gets to that big chase in the end, and they're just like, if you stuck with a film this long, you're hardly going to question us doing a jet ski chase through like the bowels of the ship so we can like launch it out as we blow the ship up.
Basically, I mean, there's so much. Deep Rising has so much stuff to it, and I think that every ridiculous thing that they do, or even the crazy action that's going on, everything that's happening, it's a whole. It's so fun. I think that there's so many elements that you're looking at, and obviously, like when you're looking at the villain, or not the creature itself, but like the human villain there, it's another different, like, it's kind of expected because, that sort of character always exists in creature features. And something bad and something horrible is going to happen to them. So, I mean, I think all that is part of this whole fun element of the film, because Deep Rising in the end is, it basically is kind of like Deep Blue Sea, right? Where a lot of it is just cult following at this point. So who knows? I mean, like, Deep Blue Sea, like, eons after, got sequels to them. So maybe with enough Deep Rising hanging in the air, maybe the cult following will bring in some type of sequel to this, which is going to be horrible, like Deep Blue Sea 2. But
wow. It's funny you mentioned that, because this is where my main complaint with the film lies. Is we get to the end, and obviously we got Finnegan and we got Trillian on the beach. They survived this whole ordeal, and then Joey comes riding in, because we've teased that Joey's dead at this point, but the fan reaction to his character being killed was so negative, they reshot the ending so that his character lives, so he like cruises on the surfboard at the end. And he's like, does his whole great bit where he's sort of like, I saw a romantic moment, I could go for a walk if she wants. And then it's that point we hear something huge out in the jungle of this desert island, and we see the trees being thrown away, and then Finnegan goes, what now? And it ends. And I was so frustrated as a kid. I was like, oh wow, Deep Rising 2, this time it's like on land, it's like, so we have this whole adventure, and it never happened.
Yeah. But I think it's so great though. The ending itself, bringing in that whole what now, making it feel like this character is just, this is something that they did deliberately. It wasn't just like, oh, the character says this is like his thing, but it actually is his thing. Like, this is his reaction to crap happening to him, basically. And I thought it was just a funny ending. I'm not a big fan of. My big complaint, and that was where it lost a little for me, just in all fairness, was the fact that, it was a cliffhanger ending, where I hate horror movies that do that, like, it's not the end, and then something's happening in the background, and then on top of it, the background of the island was just like, like tropical trees, something's like coming down, and then in the back there's a volcano, and I was like, what is this, Godzilla? Is this what we're trying to go for? Like,
wow. This is the funny thing, because I only found this out today while doing the research for this one. Originally, he had Stephen Sommers had wanted to do the King Kong reboot, and this would have served as the prequel. This would have led into the King Kong reboot.
Okay.
And he was attached to do The Mummy at the time, but he basically got caught up in production hell, and they just basically put it onto one side, and basically they were hoping that they would be able to, pick up where the failure of TriStar's Godzilla had been, and that they were going to do King Kong as a reboot, and they were going to do it right. And Stommers was really excited about this, but unfortunately, production hell put it to one side, and it ended up being picked up by Peter Jackson. Now, Peter Jackson, being the King Kong nerd that he is, basically said it all like 1940s, like the original version, and used like props in the original film and all these like other nerdy sort of details and stuff, because he just like basically he was coming in hot off Lord of the Rings, and the studio were like, basically, "Will, what you want to do?" And he's like, "I want to do my fanboy version of King Kong that's going to be 4 hours long and just perfect for rainy Sunday afternoons, because that's the only time you're ever going to be able to watch this movie." I love Jackson's King Kong. I think it's fantastic. Like through and through, I think it's fantastic. But I would so have loved to have seen Sommers like do King Kong and tie it into Deep Rising. So I guess if you like squidge things together, we could like tie this into Legendary's Monsterverse. Because you could see the guys from that world like seeing them like working a mystery here of the Deep Rising monster.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely like a connection I can see for sure, and that was one of the first impressions that I like when the movie ended. That was one of the thoughts that was going. I was like, oh, maybe this is what they're linking to and that sort of thing, and it would kind of make sense because this is set in some part of Asia, right? So it's kind of interesting to see how this all comes together. Obviously, like I am a little disappointed. It would have been nice if it did a cliffhanger and there was a sequel, because maybe it would have been good.
It would have been interesting. I mean, it's an island adventure, which again is always fun to do, especially when you've got big monsters, and when you look at that island setting, as you said already, you've got like the volcano and stuff, so you can have like a whole Lost World sort of setup there. It doesn't have to be just like the giant ape thing. Or whatever he chose to use as his big monster. If he had
I feel like the hint, because I feel like the hint here is that they basically got to this lair of this creature. It almost feels like there's a lair of what this creature is, or maybe the next creature that's hanging in this area or whatever, right? But obviously they didn't get the chance to do that. But I mean, the movie would have been great just to see Treat Williams as Finnegan again, and the sequel of them, like just having to spend the time there until they get saved, right? Because these three characters do have quite like we were talking about, they are pretty charismatic type of characters, and it would be fun to watch them, reunite and do this, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen now, but
you can't just keep holding on. It's like we just rejoin them, and it's sort of like, we've been here 50 years. Like, just whatever age they are now, just say that amount of time has passed, so we can like say everyone's aged like appropriately. So, but yeah, I mean, it's. I look at this, and I mean, it's still fun now. I mean, it is a very much a cult horror, and it's funny the fact that we choose to do it like over at the Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. They're all talking about it as well. So we've all, for some reason this week, everyone's decided to watch Deep Rising, and no doubt having a jolly good time with it. This is bizarrely on Disney Plus, and it's even better that when you get to the end of it recommends you watch Underwater as the next thing to watch, which is again a really great movie, but sadly much to overlook. So, but if you wanted something that's also Deep Rising on land, you could always go and watch Tremors. That'll make for a fun double feature with this.
Yeah, this would be Tremors would be a good one, especially since seeing how they ended the film, Tremors would definitely be kind of like a nice like fake sequel.
Yeah, they went over the hill and it's this desert town.
But the creature is still underground. I mean, if it's
It
like
is,
if they
and
keep along with that worm theme, right?
Yeah, it deep rising. It's just from the ground this time.
I mean, I also see a lot of like I think when you look at IMDb, some of the similar movies they give is another one that we looked at before for Del Toro, and that was Mimic, which is also fairly, I feel like it also isn't talked about quite that much either, but also a really fun one to watch.
It's great. You look at these movies that sort of like came out in this sort of period. I mean, you said Mimic, we said The Relic already, and all of them you can sort of like you can cram into your legendary monsterverse. It's sort of like these are all things that would be like really great to see, like the team from those movies like go and investigate. I mean, obviously they tend to specialize in the big monsters, but to have like the B team who go and investigate like the Mimic monsters or something down in the New York subway system and stuff. So I think that's what I need in my life. Just a series with them investigating like cryptozoology creatures, and like every film's like a different monster. I think that'd be really cool. But in the meantime, I mean, we've obviously got the new Meg movie on the way, so
yeah.
So I'm holding out hope. I just, as I said, whenever there's like more monster movies on the way, it's only a good thing. The fun fact as well, Frank Welker did the voice of the monster in this. He's probably best known for doing the voice of Megatron in Transformers, as in the cartoon version, not the Michael Bay version.
Okay.
It's an important thing, Kim. Frank Welker is a big thing. He's like the third highest rated. He's like the third highest grossing actor of all time for voice work. I mean, he voiced Fred in Scooby-Doo.
I don't have a problem with the person. I'm just trying to connect the person to what he's done.
And he did the voices of Shao Kahn and Reptile in Mortal Kombat.
Ah, that's probably why his name sounds familiar now. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. I knew the name from somewhere, but I just couldn't pinpoint where it was from.
Yes. But yeah, you look at his CV and he's done pretty much everything. It's like anything that you liked. I mean, he did the voice of Totoro in My Neighbor Totoro as well.
Okay.
No, it's obviously not the most complex voice role for Totoro. Were you ever disappointed the fact Totoro didn't speak?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, just me then. I thought he'd be more chatty than he is, but he's more.
I mean, if we actually did one, I'd be, since we're not talking about Totoro, but I mean, when I was a kid, I used to do with my friend, in elementary school, we would reenact the whole like Totoro scene. So I don't know. I never had a problem with them talking.
Okay.
not talking. It was It was really fun, like the little sound effects that they did and stuff. We would the little ones to the big one, and you just really it was really fun to reenact.
It's like I keep looking at his page and it's like, oh, he did the voice of the Martians in Mars Attacks. It's like, God, I think he'd have a season of his own. Like he does the voice of Santa's little helper in The Simpsons. And Nibbler on Futurama. God, this is just going to be a whole other rabbit hole I go down the rest of this afternoon now, so. Anything else you want to bring up about Deep Rising, although?
Nope.
Cool. So there we have it. Deep Rising. Obviously, go check it out. It is available on Disney Plus at the moment, but I think you can rent it pretty much everywhere. So definitely go check it out. And yes, and then once you've seen it, you too will question, where's my Deep Rising 2? But make it the same as this one, not like Deep Blue Sea 2. But that brings us into tonight's episode. Thank you, as always, for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to be listening to us. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Come and say hi to us there. And you can check out our blog, which is moviestpodcast.wordpress.com, where not only do we have our complete archive of episodes covering everyone from Paul W.S. Anderson, Guillermo del Toro, Sofia Coppola, and Ang Lee, to name but a few, we also have our Friday Film Club, where every Friday myself and Kim pick a film to highlight. Sometimes there's a theme, sometimes there's not, but either way it's a chance for us to talk about more of the movies that we love. But Kim, what is next on our season-long look at the creature feature?
Yeah, we're going to 2010 and we're looking at Piranha 3D.
Fantastic.
Yeah, not to be mistaken for 2012's Piranha 3 Double D. We had a whole discussion about that before, so...
Alexandre Aja, once again proving himself the master of the modern remake. Having already done The Hills of Ice, here he gives us a sneaky third film in the Piranha trilogy with his title 3D, which not only made the most of the 3D effects, but also gave us a really great reboot of the Joe Dante original. But we'll obviously be discussing that further when we look at Piranha 3D on our next episode. But until then, thank you for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim, and we'll be back next time talking about Piranha 3D. Good night.